Good evening, Black Scholars. Good evening. I'm in Atlanta, snowed in, and I'm not complained about it. I got a fire brewing, and got me some marshmallows and some graham crackers, and I'm having a good time, if you know what I mean. Anyway, um, enough of that. Today we're touching on something very interesting. We're touching on two subjects. Number one, were there black knights? And in addition, were there black samurais? Um, we'll touch on that in a moment. The main topic of the day is why was a gun called the Great Equalizer? Where that scholarship is coming from Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, um, aka Dr. Welsing, right? Um, we're going to start a little backwards with that. We're going to start with gun as great equalizer. What does that mean? Well, um, the modern handgun, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says that when Christopher Columbus and Europeans unlocked themselves out of the icebox of Europe of the day, shortly after the Young Adrias, um, they got on boats and traveled the world, um, you know, conquering lands. I mean, it was a saying years ago, the sun shall never set on the English Empire. That means that there were so many English colonies abroad that the sun was up on at least one, right? Well, um, Dr. Welsing said something very fascinating. She said that when the Europeans would go to distant lands with melanated people, they would have relations with the women. You know, sailors um, would have, sexual relation with the women, um, consensually and without consent. And boats would often break down in dock. And it took about a year to fix a broke down boat, wooden ship in dry dock. And by the time that the boat was fixed, the baby um, had been born from the white sailors. And through captain's logs and reports, Dr. Welsing she posited that um, the Europeans start to notice that no matter what rape of what oh that's a Freudian slip, whatever race of woman was essayed, we're not going to use the R word, we're going to say sexually assaulted, essayed, um, which no matter what race of melanated woman was sexually assaulted by the European colonizers, the baby would always come out looking like the melanated mother, and they start to realize that um, genetics could be weaponized. Dr. Welsing posited that if Europeans thought that if, say, a black man or a heavily melanated person decided to do what they do and they raided Europe with their boats, that the European, phenotype would just disappear. So, in essence, the the genetic material was was seen as a weapon, and kind of still is. Doctor, I say doctor. He's doctor to me, but we're going to say Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory said that years ago when he was living, he said that the election of Barack Obama is what sent white America over the edge because Dr. Welsing's uh, theory was put to the test. Barack Obama had a lily white mom and an African dad, and he just looked black. He looked blacker than I do, actually. So that was like proof, and bringing to the forefront that genetics could be in the views of Europeans weaponized. Dr. Welsing also did a series of interviews with her white colleagues, and she found out through her interviews that white people do not want. Well, they really love, in general, according to Dr. Welsing, European Americans want to stay. They want to keep their phenotype. They're not interested and look in other types of ways. According to Dr. Welsing, she says on page 106 of her masterpiece, indeed, if the understood threat to white genetic survival was a black male's genital apparatus, consciously or unconsciously, my beautiful black people, let's look at, we need to, that word unconscious, we need to learn that. I'm gonna talk about what it means in a while, but she says consciously or unconsciously, the white psyche would be compelled to produce a weapon of defense. Did y'all hear that? She said that um, the white psyche, either consciously or unconsciously, knowing that black plus white equals black. Any first year, I mean, any freshman biology 101 student knows that. Any high school junior knows that, right? Um, she says they would be compelled to produce a weapon of defense. So they view in the unconscious collective mind of European males, the black genetic material is looked at as a weapon. Isn't that interesting? Well, she says of comparable or greater power. The context is producing a weapon. Europeans produce a weapon of defense of comparable or greater power than that of the black man's penis and testicles. That's what she says. Dr. Weldon Fergley said it should be made clear here that the black male's genital apparatus is the most feared relative to the general apparatus of non-white males because in possessing the greatest potential to produce melanin, the pigment responsible for all true skin coloration, black males have the greatest genetic potential to annihilate global white minority. God dang, there it is. The issue is being annihilated with some through genetic material. Um, isn't that interesting? What are your thoughts on that, Wani?
Oh my God.
I could talk about it all day, but let's get us counter opinions.
um, yeah, that's a major problem that we have, and we're going to continue to have that for the rest of our existence with this particular group. What makes matters worse is that we don't have just any black men, we have the black men, because nobody's trying to, do anything with Africans. They're just like a second thought. They don't have the sexiness or the, you know, je ne sais quoi. They don't have it. So we really, the spotlight is on our men in that case. And yeah, the American white man is aware of it. And that's why they have all that, they have a permanent bad attitude because no matter what you say, they know, and I'm a woman, I'm going to pull my woman card right now, and I hardly ever pull it. Women talk, global women talk, and they say what they like. And they know that they secretly like black American men. They know that. And they just they harbor that, and the women say, "Oh no, we don't feel like that." No, no, we don't want those niggers. But then behind the scenes they do. And that's running in the back of their minds.
Hmm.
That's always running in the back of their minds, and that's a permanent um, place of hostility. So, yeah, that's a problem, and it's not going away.
Exactly. So, what Wani said was back of their mind. That's the collective subconscious. Um, let's deal with that. Perfect segue, Wani. Let's deal with that subconscious motivation, that subconscious bias. So, uh, in your mind, you have, according to an ancient text, Hermetic text, if you want to go there, that's was what it called. There, everything is divided into masculine and feminine. Now, I'm not talking about a sexual context. I'm talking about just basically positive and negative, including the mind. Your mind, your conscious mind is masculine, and your subconscious collective mind is feminine. Now, this is real deep, guys. Y'all might want to get out pen and paper and write this down. Where am I getting this from? Carl Gustav Jung. Um, Carl Jung identified this. Well, let's get deep. What is a man supposed to do for his family? Protect, right? And provide. Okay. But mainly, a man's function is of protection. Well, your conscious mind protects your unconscious mind, the collective unconscious, because your unconscious mind is where ideas are, where the vast pool of information and ideas lay. Well, hey, Professor, what does this have to do? What are you talking about? What I'm talking about is there are things in your collective subconscious mind that motivate you even when you're not aware of it. If you look at the diagram on diagram 3 and 4 in a jumbotron from Dr. Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers, she shows that subconscious identification on a subconscious level. According to Welsing, Europeans developed the handgun in direct opposition to the black male genitalia. Basically, I'm gonna put it exactly how she put it in the interview. She said, Your brain computer says black man has a weapon that can destroy me. I must create a weapon to destroy him." Isn't that interesting? And what blew my mind about this particular interview with Dr. Welsing is Dr. Welsing said that's why um, when black males are killed by the police, back in the day, they were killed by the police. A good excuse that the police would use is, "I thought he had a weapon. I thought he had a weapon." Dr. Welsing said he did have a weapon. He had a weapon in his pants that could genetically annihilate a whole group of people. Isn't that interesting? Makes sense. What's on your mind? Come on, make sense. What's on your mind? Can you hear me? Make sense.
Oh, I'm just listening right now.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Oh, did you ring the bell? Did you ring? Did you request to speak? Make sense.
I did.
okay. Well, the more on what Wells was saying about that. She says the individual and collective white brain computer, given the task of solving the global problem of white genetic survival, eventually evolved a solution in the form of technology that would address the specific issue of white genetic and weakness or inadequacy. She says technology is always developed to take over at the point of humans or organism anatomical and physiological limitation. So, guys, what we're looking at with respect to Welsing is something very old. We're looking at a time period identified by Solon. Solon was Plato's great uncle, and Solon warned Plato and his colleagues about a people who were so organized, so powerful, so strong that if they ever regained the mantle of power, they would be unstoppable. I don't have, I can't speak definitively, but I'm pretty sure that Solon was talking about us. And Plato was then tasked with coming up with a philosophy, coming up with government structures, coming up with economics. Economics, on some level, means you're going to be in debt. Uh, um, I'll look up scholarship on that. But I was watching an interview with an economist that said economics was created basically by Plato to keep people in debt and bondage. So what I'm trying to say is the whole system, this Western system rather, has been developed in diametric opposition of the black family, and Plato identified uh, that posit that they should never rise again, and the unconscious mindset of Europeans in power is designing things, designing apparatuses, both intellectually and physically, to keep the status quo. Moving right along, were there black knights? Why ain't have I heard of black knights? Wani, were there black knights?
Yes, there were.
End of show.
Uh, no, an excerpt from Celtic literature describes Sir Morian, and it says he was all black. Even as I tell ye, his head, his body, and his hands were all black, saving only his teeth. His shield and his armor were even those of a Moor, and black as a raven. So, um, we've all heard the arguments that the Moors are white and the Egyptians are white. But the problem is that the people we're speaking to today are liars. And thankfully, the people that describe these people repeatedly describe them as black. And there's no doubt about it.
That's very interesting. I have evidence to show that the samurai was black. The original samurai was black. Wanda, do you have scholarship on that? Do you what do you have you
I know of a black samurai, but here's another issue.
okay.
Um, I know of a black popular samurai. Let me see what his name is. Yasuki, the true story of a legendary African samurai. But remember, this group of people is from the Jaman people
Mhm.
who are black. They're Negrito individuals way back when. So it depends on what period of time we're speaking about, of whether some of them could have been melanated individuals. It just depends on what was going on with their, genetics at the time. So he may not have been way out of the ordinary like they want to portray. And of course they're arguing and fighting. And I don't know what to say about these people because they had a geneticist that said that every person in Asia genetics trace back to Africa. And that was done in 2015. And they know that's a fact. Every region over there in Asia. And this guy was from China who did the research, and they never got mad at him. They say they never got mad at him, but they get mad at us when we bring it up. Now, this man is not of Japanese descent. He's obviously came directly from Africa, but they already have melanated people in the land in the form of negritos, and that's not debatable either because they found their skeletons over in Taiwan, one of the areas that they lived, and they also populated all of Southeast Asia, and it's called Sundaland, parts of India. So those people are represented heavily there, all over Japan, and the Philippines and other places, and you can still see the remnants of those tribes in some places where you really don't know about it. I mean, I've seen people and I was like, Where's that person from? Oh, they're from here, but they come from an island. Like they were visiting mainland China, but they were coming from an area off of China that we really never hear about. So they're tucked away in these places, probably because the incoming people were hostile to them. I know that for a fact they described everybody brown as a southern barbarian, and so they did not like them, and they kind of just, moved away
Well, Wani,
because they were.
yeah, I have a
Oh, go
question
ahead.
for I have a question for you, Wani. Why I'm sure I'm about to put a picture of a black samurai in the thing. I'm sure that the black samurais are were prevalent, and I'm sure um that people in Asia used to be melanated. I'm not gonna call them black, but they were darker than me. So I got
Mhm.
a question for you. How did people in Asia um, end up lightening up, as it were? How did that happen?
Waves and waves of people from the north they were mutated in lighter skin. They just kept coming, and they just keep coming toward melanated people as they do today. That's a thing. They just go where the melanated people are.
And just, but where?
They blend them out. I mean, we're talking about over tens of thousands of years, so that's how it happens.
So, but where did these light people come from?
Um, Basically, the mutations that they have are coming from the north, like Siberian people that mutated and moved down to parts of China. And then the Chinese people were saying that these southern barbarians, they were in southern China. So they were complaining about brown people, and they were calling them black dwarfs. And we also know in Taiwan, they have a holiday about black dwarfs, right?
Right.
Because they feel sad that they killed them, over some BS. It's kind of like a Tulsa massacre situation. And they literally found negritos, black dwarfs. They are small statured individuals. They found them in a cave in Taiwan. So all of that hooping and hollering they've been doing, and everybody's like, what are they talking about? They literally killed some black dwarfs, and they are sorry about it, and they have that celebration as a result of it. Those people are still here, and they will, they find them in the same places that they're being talked about.
Yeah, my daddy told me he served in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and he talked about in Cambodia and Laos, them folks were just straight up black, nappy hair. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And it just makes me wonder. You see a trend of the world turning lightening up, and I just want to know what that's
It's a
about.
mutation. It's a mutation.
Interesting.
There's there's a book actually called Peking's Principle,
Okay.
and it talks about basically they said it's basically been a genocide. Like it's been like Mao. They're saying that basically the people he killed were the darker skinned Chinese people. Like the lighting has been just really this last 100 years. There's just been a real campaign to basically Sino-size or like make them more East Asian, like the further south they go. In parts of China, that's why like in China the people are still more brown than the people in like Japan and Korea and
Right,
stuff.
right.
Yeah, yeah, they that pale element's basically been basically on a genocide, as they reach further south. That's what That's why Japan enslaved China the way they did less than 100 years ago because they looked like they were brown people. They were very 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 brown people. Like they wasn't even yellow. They were brown.
I went to elementary school in the early '90s with a kid from Taiwan, and he was darker than me.
He might have come from those negritos.
So interesting. And the Taiwanese. If, forgive me if you hear me blowing something out. I'm cooking marshmallows on the fire. Um,
S'mores.
s'mores, yes.
Give me some
Oh, you
s'mores.
got some chocolates?
Yeah,
You got chocolate with it too?
I got graham
Okay.
crackers too. What you got? But I'm old school. But anyway, yeah, he was in my. I'm gonna say something interesting in my elementary school class. We the a lot of the most of the black males got thrown in special ed, including me, and I was so confused because when they came to get me for special ed, I thought it was a white guy who sat directly behind me. We're gonna call him Jay. I'm not gonna say his name, but he used to cheat off my test, and we both would make straight A's. So when they came and got me, I was like, okay, well maybe I'm slow. But I was wondering why don't y'all get Jay? He cheats off all my tests. They never got him. But when I was in special ed, it was 95% black males and one Taiwanese. He was from Taiwan and he was brown. So I mean that kind of speaks for itself about the agenda. You know what I'm saying? But it's I always found it fascinating. FBA Trade A, could you tell me more about this takeover of melanated lands? How was it orchestrated? Where did the vector of attack come from? Did it come from Europe? Did it come from Asia? What are we looking at? Because it's worldwide. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Educate us.
it's so they're saying like from what I heard, so like Mao's little revolution or whatever, it was funded by the Rothschilds and
Whoa. Okay.
people who, because millions, tens of millions of people were killed. It was one of the biggest genocides in the 1900s, and Peking's principle talks about how that was basically a systemic extermination of the darker skinned populations there. That's why China's trying to become more of a homogenous nation, like more of the Han Chinese phenotype we see today. But they've been exterminating the people who are darker for the last 100 years, well, 100 or so years, or close to it. So that's why they have the attitudes they have, and that's why they were allowed to ascend the way they've been ascended. They weren't tackled the way Africa was after decolonization. Because they went along with that Rothschild thing, that Rothschild program. So
And what I'm seeing, I traveled quite frequent. Well, every year. Well, I'm falling off, but used to travel to West Africa a lot. And what I'm starting to see, ladies and gentlemen, in Ghana and in Nigeria, Togo, is a lot of the lightening up of Africa. Now that might sound crazy to you, but I went to Accra. It's actually funny. It's called Western Hills Mall in Accra. I think that's funny because it's a black mall in Birmingham called Western Hills Mall. So what's that about? But it's a little inside joke. But Western Hills Mall, we were in there, and I saw a bunch of biracial Chinese, half Ghanaian babies. So it seems like this whole lightening up thing is everywhere. And if you look back to Dr. Chancellor Williams, destruction of Trade, are you familiar with destruction of black civilization?
There is one of the most important books out there. Yeah, I mean that was one of the main weapons they used was they'll basically build a mixed mulatto class.
Go ahead, bro. My brother know what the hell he talking about. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead and educate us on that. Tell him so I'm not the only one saying that. Go ahead.
yeah. Basically, I mean it's the campaign now, and like that's what you. I mean that's not even just around the world. That's here in America. You see that now. It's like today you see the best, the highest class, the highest achieving Black American males, and I mean just Black males in general. A lot of them they've been steered away early because they were exceptional, and their mind is geared towards trying to be with that other side. So they are basically taking their privilege and making a mixed class, and that mixed class is getting the privilege that otherwise black kid, 100% black kid would get, and that's going to be a problem because that's that's creating a whole class of people from what could otherwise be our people, and it's putting all those resources, all the wealth, all the knowledge too. Keep in mind the knowledge because these are
Right.
the well-to-do, the smarter black people, tend to be in, or the people who are, I would say, exceptional in some way, shape, or form. They have a talent. They're a freak in nature. They're 8 feet tall, something like that. All that knowledge, is been given to them. So this is really horrible for us. This is diabolical to us. It's killing us because, like I said, it's the people who are, the exceptional ones, the people who should otherwise be the leaders in our group, they're creating a whole new group of people. And these people don't say they black. They say they something else. They don't say us and y'all. I mean us and we. They say them and y'all. They in reference to us. So and the thing that's killing me or just my nerves is just this wide acceptance. Like we not supposed to say nothing. We just supposed to accept it. And it's like the celebrities, they the worst ones. It's like it's almost like a pact with them. Like if you're gonna get some sort of shine, you got to promote this. And what's happening is they're trying to create a thing where we're being shamed for even speaking out against it. Oh, you dick watcher. Oh, nigga, you ain't with us, bro. Like that's really going to be, something we're going to have to contend with very, very soon, or it's going to kill us. It's going to kill us, man. I mean, dude, they don't identify with us, dude. They don't. I mean, I've kicked it with some younger ones, and I've, try to educate them. I tell them about Tulsa. They'll roll their eyes. Oh yeah, whatever. They don't. Them motherfuckers. Versus my nieces, nephews, my full blooded FBAs. They feel away, but them, no sir. I'll be like, oh, that's y'all. Like it's like that type of thing. And
Wow.
yeah, and sometimes it's even animus towards because a lot of times it's the mama who ain't, and she don't fuck with niggas for real except for the niggas she dick that's giving her dick. So it's like they just kind of be like,
Well, Dr. Francis Quest Wells talked about what you just said with the mama. You said a whole bunch I want to unpack, but Dr. Francis Quest Wells said one of her clients had an issue with color. One of her black clients had an issue with color, and he talked about his mama. He said his mama would look at a girl down the street, and he had a big old crush on a chocolate girl, say really cute, a brown girl lived next door. And his mama never said nothing ugly about the brown girl. But when the little mixed girl, the high yellow girl, walked down the street, his mama would say, "Isn't she pretty? Don't you think she's pretty?" And when the chocolate girl would walk in the house, the one he wanted, his mama wouldn't say nothing. So that can be perpetuated a bunch of ways. Last thing I'm gonna say before I go to the black is what Trey Day was talking about with mulatto class. I was just telling somebody about this. Um, the That's what happened in Haiti. Haiti had one of the greatest revolution in history against the strongest army at his time. So you think about in 1804, the French, under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a fucking brilliant general, occupied Haiti, and the Haitians beat the living shit out of Napoleon's army for a lot of reasons. But my point is the leadership of Dessalines. The two leaders was Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture, and the mulatto class turned on it. That's what happened in Haiti. And let me give you some scholarship on that. According to Jacob Carruthers, the Irritated Genie, a book all you need to buy, page 107. Dr. Carruthers says, "quote Blacks generally attribute the assassination of Dessalines, now he was one of the leaders, to mulattoes. Check this shit out. Quote, while mulattoes generally point out that the conspirators existed on both blacks and mulattoes, the Northeast position, how do you pronounce this word? Hold on one second. How do you pronounce that word right there? What's that word? The N word. That N. What does that mean?
Noiriste.
Say it again.
Noiriste.
Nuarist. The Nuarist position calls to plot an act of treachery on the part of mulattoes to establish mulatto rule. Did you hear that? So basically, the mulatto class of Haiti turned against the masses, which were melanated, beautifully melanated people, and said, you know what, we gonna rule this bitch. So that's a thing, a theme that we see all across the world. Um, and I'm gonna end with this. If y'all watch the Who Cloned Tyrone, if you look at the management class and Who Cloned Tyrone, what they look like, all of them was little bitty light skinned people with froze. I wondered did the writer of Who Cloned Tyrone read Jacob Carruthers' book. But on that, I digress. Take us home to black. Educate us, please, sir.
What's going on, Professor, Nikki, Wani, everybody else in the space? I hope everybody's doing great. I just want to add one of the first like black type of documentaries I ever seen was uh, called Reincarnation, and I put a snippet of it in a purple bubble. And it's interesting what Wani said earlier about the like the original Cambodians being like the Grito type. And my granny always told me that we keep certain sayings we may like change them over time, but we keep certain sayings for a reason. And I always felt like we never let go of the word nigger because it has many definitions. It's a broad definition when it comes down to the etymology or the origin of it. And one of the origins of nigger, well, naga in the Asian language means king too, just like the Ethiopian version. But uh, knowing that the Cambodians used to worship dark skinned people called the naga, and one of the guys, or one of the guys was called a Sambo, and it's funny that the Portuguese use both of those terms to label dark skinned people within a caste system. Uh, I just wanted to add that because I kind of found that very interesting.
Oh, I love it. So in my book, those of you that don't know, I wrote a book on this well, not on this subject, but I do have a essay in my book where I learned, like the black brought up, the Portuguese exploited this colorism. They exploit, and this is going to be graphic to hear, but it's true. The Portuguese at Elmina Castle and Cape Coast would every morning pick the young African enslaved woman that they wanted to rape, and they would rape her in front of everybody. Why? To instill a lack of trust between men and black African men and women, and to the second reason was insidious. The second reason was to create a mulatto class of enslaved people. And what would they do with this mulatto class of enslaved people? That's the crazy part. what they would do with this mulatto class of enslaved people is put them in management positions. I learned that they were sold on different boats for different with different premiums and sent to Jamaica with intent of making them managers of society. They were sent to what would later become the United States of America with intent of turning them into the management class of society. So, ladies and gentlemen, one contribution that I love that I give to y'all is letting you know that people that look like me for a long time have been turned into weapons to afford the system of white supremacy because they are proximal. But what's interesting about that is our sister Wani Spots educated me and told me something interesting about the Portuguese. So, Wani, are the Portuguese white?
They said that they're not,
Hmm.
and never got to the bottom of it because they say that they have too much admixture to be considered white, but then they still have some, people there that are saying that they're white. So I don't know what the status is, but yeah, one of their researchers said that they're not technically white. Well, we know that they're a fixed mulatto race, like Greek people and other Mediterranean people. They've had um, genetic exchange with North Africa forever. So, of course, they're not pure white, and there's no such thing as pure white. We haven't even identified what white is. So, there's no such thing, but you know what we're talking about. We're talking about people that look more and closer to blue eyed, uh, blonde haired, fair skinned people. And that's, I guess, the epitome of white. And they don't generally look like that. That's why you get a Tina Marie that came up. Remember Tina Marie, the singer?
Yeah.
She's Portuguese. She showed a picture of her father. He had very, very, very curly hair.
Oh,
So,
okay. I didn't know that. That makes sense because that's
So
why.
that's why she wrote that song.
Portuguese say love. Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
and that's why she sounded like that.
Yes.
Very interesting. So I wonder. God damn, nobody hates like family. Y'all ever heard that?
Yeah, Portuguese
Yeah, I
people
saw
got
that.
all kinds of haplotypes of sickle cell too in Spain.
See,
They got like yeah, they got like three different haplotypes of sickle cell. So yeah,
wow,
they've been colonizing
Wow.
multiple waves of Africans. You know, multiple waves.
man, that's so interesting. When I was in grad school, I learned that violence perpetuates violence, right? So, for instance, uh, if a young subject is sexually abused, there's a higher probability that this subject is going to perpetuate sexual abuse than if the subject wasn't. You know, the violence breeds violence. But that makes me wonder: is were the Portuguese just doing what was done to them? I don't know. It's a lot of answers that need a lot of questions that need to be answered with this, but it's an interesting topic. Come on, the black educators, bro.
So I was really going to ask a question, kind of hypothetically. So does that mean that Adam Clayton Powell was Ethiopian or Turkish, since his father started the Abyssinian Church, and that's another word for Ethiopian?
Wani, I don't know about
I don't know.
his lineage. I know his politics, and I know that Adam Clayton Powell was a reverse weapon. It's like this edges of the same sword. The mulatto classes often served as traitors in Western society, but B, on the other hand, we tend to also serve as liberators. You know, like Frederick Douglass was a mulatto. Malcolm X. Need I say more? You know, so but I'm gonna have to do some research on Adam Clayton Powell because he's a very interesting person to look through. I'm trying to find
I
y'all
mean,
ex.
he
Go ahead.
was technically, his father said he was mixed. It never really just labeled him, but he was okay with being over black congregation and being involved in the black community. But he wanted his son to, he wanted Adam Clayton Powell to pledge to a white fraternity, but unfortunately, some white people did a lineage check on him and found out he was mixed somewhat as a mulatto, and just shunned him. And what's crazy, he had a black roommate, and the black roommate didn't want to be in the room with him either. After after the incident of them finding out that he was mixed and kind of cosplaying, playing because he was playing both sides of the tracks. He used to mess with white girls and black girls. So it's really funny that he ended up becoming like a white face for black people to push gender for us.
Yeah.
And Malcolm X used to talk about that too. I'll post a clip in there in the purple pill.
Give it to us. Now, what you said made me think about my Aunt June. I'm gonna brag on her. My Aunt June raised me. She was my best friend. She died of COVID in 2020 after living a long life. She was in her 80s. But June, um, my mother's side of the family, they just look white, but they're not. They're mixed with Native American. But there's some rape lineage there from Opelika, Alabama. My big mama was raped. That's okay. But anyway, we called her Big Mama. But anyway, my Aunt June in the 60s, when she was 19, got accepted to a program at a local hospital. And segregation was going on. I mean, integration, I'm sorry. And it was a little integration program at the Catholic hospitals called St. Vincent's. It's a huge hospital system. St. Vincent's used to have a partnership with Tulane in New Orleans, which is actually a pretty damn good school. The School of Nursing. It used to be you could kind of go through there, but that program was exclusively for white Catholics. Now, my Aunt June was neither white nor Catholic, but she looked white. Um, and June got applied and got accepted. Now, this I'm gonna write this story, man. I'm so proud to tell this. But June, remember integration, they needed a certain quota of black people to be compliant with law. So they picked my Aunt June and a 45-year-old married woman named Betty. Betty looked white too. So they spent 3 years in nursing school without anybody knowing that they were black. And the stories that June told me, I'm gonna try to remember them best I can and write a book on it. Like, imagine two black girls being in a nursing cohort. And I imagine nursing school's hard, Nikki, isn't it? It's hard as hell, ain't it? Um,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
right.
It
So
racist as fuck at oh I apologize, but I went to a
no, you're right.
PWI. I went to
Uh-huh.
a PWI and I went to a Catholic PWI and that was no
Uh-oh.
joke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you already know. But my Aunt June said they it's actually not funny. She was black, and none of the students knew. They thought she was Italian. She looked like an Italian lady. The women on my mom's side of the family look Italian, and they would be around her in nursing school saying all kind of nigga, fuck that nigga, that stupid nigga, and June be there biting her lip. But her friend was older. Betty was older and had a husband and stuff, so she'd be telling her. She said without Betty, she would have gotten in a fight and got kicked out. But Betty was like, "Baby, you better be looking at your career." But long story short, before I go into a long diatribe, I brought that up to say that that did happen. People posed as white to get where they needed to go. My Aunt June did that. My Aunt June was the first nurse practitioner in the state of Alabama. But upon graduation, a week before graduation, June and Betty told the whole class that they were black. They were like, y'all please stop saying nigga, I'm black. And they were like, oh, you're black. And the sheer ignorance of what June said, one of the nursing students asked June and Betty, could they take off their pants and bend over because their dad told them that black people have tails. It's ridiculous.
Okay, never
That's going to
mind.
be a good.
Why are they referring to us all day long like that? It's,
And they're the
they're
ones with tails.
obsessed. Right. We don't have tails. That's Indians in them.
There's
So go
books.
away.
There's documentation of them having tails. There are pictures of them
They
with
don't
tails.
even need document. They literally have the tail on there now. We don't even need a book
Yeah,
for
they still
this.
got them. I'm about to say,
They
yeah,
have them on there and still getting born with hair all over them and tails and all the rest of it,
yeah, you
horns.
see the little incision over. Yeah, I ain't gonna get too graphic.
Go
They
ahead.
do. They do. No, you're right. It is.
Knock yourself out.
No, they get them cut off when they're born when it's still soft.
Yeah,
Wow.
right.
Yeah, you still see a little incision above the ass a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, doctors need to. Well, I don't know. Yeah, they should cut the tail off, but they like to cut off other stuff when you're born.
Mm-mm. Go ahead, fuck off.
Should have told them bend over and let me see
I,
yours.
you know, I
I
think
was
it's
just gonna say that
Mhm.
one
funny.
make me think about the
Hold on.
transgenders.
We're gonna go with fuck all, then we're going to the black, then we're going to Stacy. Go ahead, fuck all.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you all are talking about individuals with tails right now because that's actually the subject that I wanted to kind of hint on. And thank you, Professor Wani Nikki, for bringing me up. It's always a pleasure to be in your rooms. Um, I heard you guys ask earlier, where do we think that this light skin gene comes from? And that's actually a question that I've been pondering for a long time myself. Um, and I've been looking into different theories. One of my main theories was that pretty much they did not fully disclose to us all the living beings that were on this planet, or they kind of did. They kind of told us about archaic hominids, but they kind of exaggerated um, how recently of a species these archaic hominids were. So I did more research into it, and I actually wanted to share something in the jumbotron really fast, because I don't want
Go
to
ahead.
sound I don't want to sound like a pseudo guy. I know a lot of my stuff is sounds really pseudo because I got a lot of far fetched um theories and things like that. But just let me find. Just give me a second. Somebody else can talk really fast, and once I find
Yeah,
them.
see, the thing with pseudo is that some things that sound pseudo are actually correct. Like when we look back at what Afrocentric said and what Pan Africanist said, and they were walking around in those Egyptian outfits, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and everybody was laughing. We actually are related to um, King Ramses III and the Amarna mummies. A lot of black men have that lineage on the paternal side. The women can't see it, but do the best you can. But, and then other things that they said are not true. So that's why we're here. We just have to work out what's true and what is an overcorrection of Eurocentric teaching. Because when you get everything whitewashed, the knee jerk reaction is to overcorrect and then make everything black when some of those things were white. So that's what our job is here. It is to go through all the information and get some cleaner facts. Get some clean facts.
So I posted it in the jumbotron. So my research kind of led me to the conclusion that archaic humans are not as old as they tell us they were, and
Hmm.
that our archaic humans actually existed recently. So
You mean like that they got extinct 40,000 years ago?
yeah,
Okay, yeah,
like
they just make up stuff, so that could be true.
yeah. So my source is actually a Roman historian named Strabos, and he wrote a famous, very famous book called Geographica, um in which he speaks of the Thracian people living alongside troglodytes. Okay, so I'll read it. So he says the Scorsese lived along the Ister and were divided into two tribes called the Great Scordisi and the Little Scordisi. The former lived between two rivers that empty into the Istor, the Norris, which flows past the Segista and the Margis, right? Let me just kind of skip to the part where he kind of says um that they lived among Trog. Okay, so he says that in this side, the Ister, these people, as also the Crobazi and what are called the Troglodyte, live above. So basically, he was making a point in his book to say that the people of Thracia lived alongside the Troglodytes. So I wanted to kind of get a a clearer understanding of what exactly people kind of classify as troglodytes. And I actually found a book of classifications of troglodytes on a US government website. And so I screenshotted the pictures of just two. It's more species of troglodytes that they had listed out, and it's actually one that they had with a tail. That's actually what made me kind of think of what you guys were saying. And they called this troglodyte luciferi or something like that. but
Interesting.
but basically in the chat I posted the pictures and the definition that they have of the troglodytes. I don't know if everybody can see it, Professor Wani. But that's
I
basically,
see it.
yeah. Let me
Is
post.
it the one where they live in caves? Is
Yeah,
it something other than?
they do live. They did say they lived in caves, but the most interesting feature about them was that not only did they live in caves, but they were also hairy creatures. Some of them had tails, and they were very distinct from humans.
Did they walk upright? I heard that those people, some of them walked on all fours.
Yeah, I believe some of them walked on all fours as well. And I think this kind of, because when the original pictures that I found of troglodytes were kind of medieval pictures, and it kind of depicted the Europeans finding any troglodytes that were hiding out in the forest, and they would basically burn them and kill them if they did not assimilate to society. And so that's kind of what prompted my search on troglodytes, because I'm like, these people had to come from somewhere. This can't be all fiction. And so I actually came
Well,
onto.
no, it's not fiction at all. Um, they lived in caves. We just don't know which hominid they are.
Wow.
But there's hominids we don't know about, and they know it. They're not denying this anymore because they've found too many hominids, and they didn't expect to find that many. And now they're finding tiny hominids and big hominids. So yeah, these are people that lived in caves. I'll try to look more into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually posted the government website is govinfo.gov. As you can see on the picture where I posted the picture from, that's the source. So it's a government website. So this information is public knowledge. It's just like, it's just you actually have to do your research to find out the knowledge. So you got a few different species of troglodyte there that you can check out.
What group were they living with again? I forgot what you said
They
earlier.
were living with the Thracians.
Thracian.
Yeah, and that's modern day
Oh, that's
Bulgaria.
very that's very recent.
That's modern day
Wow.
Bulgaria.
Oh my God.
Well, I want to take this moment to thank fuck all, man. You come in this bitch with some with scholarship that I never heard of is on point, and man, you doing your thing, man. I enjoy you coming up here, man. But continue, laying your plane.
Yeah, and then I just had a couple more points just to address with the black said the Naga people. The Naga people were actually considered to be Dravidians of southern India. Um and then I wanted to say there are white and Portuguese Spanish because of the Visigoths. Those were pretty much a Germanic tribe who inhabited Spain and Portugal. I also wanted to say uh, as of recently, they consider a people called the Circassians, which come from the Caucasian area. Those were considered to be the purest blood white people. Um,
I'm gonna talk about that in a moment, but go ahead.
and then they also found they also found a linguistic link similarity between the Bantu languages and the Dravidian languages. And yeah, I'll end it there.
Well, if you look at Michael Bradley's masterpiece, he identifies, if you pay close attention to it on page 23 to 24, he identifies that when Adolf Hitler went on these escapades trying to find the perfect man, and Adolf Hitler said that he found the perfect man that he's talking about in the Caucasoid Mountains. Um, Hitler said, quote, "The new man is already among us. He is here. I will tell you a secret. I have seen the new man. Just as seeing him has made me afraid." Now, what was he talking about? There's a group of people, like the gentleman said prior. There are people that they don't tell us about, and apparently there was a race of people in them Caucasoid Mountains that were different than the rest of us. And the Nazis based it on moon cycles. I don't know if that's true because the Nazis were uh, they delved into pseudoscience, but they argued that at a certain time in human development, this group of people were, quote, freed from the full force of Earth's pull because the moon's orbit was different. And he said the Earth's pull, being free from the Earth's pull, made them grow gigantic in stature and gigantic in spirit. And they were like, the super master race. So a lot of people don't know that. That's what Hitler was trying to recreate. This group of people that he alleged to see in the mountains that were free from the force of gravity. Now we know the force of gravity does affect our brain waves, and it does affect, our growth.
I'm trying to find out more about that. Free from the force of gravity? Were they levitating or
Well,
something?
no, no, no. Okay, so yeah, it's very interesting, Wani. So if you want to know it, it says the theory, what the Nazi when they found the Nazi research, it said that Um, according to the theory of fire, blah blah blah. The previous 3 moons, I mean, Earth had 3 moons. This is a theory; it's not fact. Don't quote me on this. The Earth had 3 moons and opened up the planet's volcanic interior and delusion man with lava and fire. Although 3 moons crashed to Earth previously, each shone at night in the sky for many thousands of years before the cataclysm. The moon's orbits did gradually degenerated over many eons, and as each moon grew closer to the Earth, its gravitational field tended to counteract the gravity on Earth. Organisms on Earth, including men, freed from the full force of the Earth's pull, grew gigantic. Isn't that interesting? Now, this is Nazi research. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that modern medicine comes from cruel Nazi experiments. So we learned a lot from those fuckers. Um, but that's so crazy. They allege that the Nazis allege that the young Andreas basically came from a moon losing orbit and hitting Earth. Um, and but when there were more than one moon in the atmosphere, they counteracted each other's gravity, and gravity was neutral, was canceled out. So, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all ever been to the beach and you've seen the waves go in and come out, crash, 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 what's happening right there is when the waves go in, the moon is pulling the waves. The gravitational force of the moon is pulling all that water, trying to suck that water to the moon. But Earth is more has more mass than the moon, therefore it has more gravity. So Earth wins that tug of war and brings the water back. So that's why the waves go in and crash in and crash out. These waves have an effect on your mind, on your process of your mind. So what they're saying is these moons counteracted each other and therefore cancel gravity. So for a period of time, there was a man that was born during this period of time that was damn near perfect in spirit and in mind. And Hitler alleged to find one. Um, uh, uh, Dr. Bradley said men grew gigantic in spirit too. Men became gods. He says their intelligence and moral power were such that they were even able to postpone the inevitable crashing of a moon. That's that Star Wars stuff. Got it? The Force. But they were not able to prevent it. The moon's crash and human populations were decimated in both fire and in ice. That's that young Adrias. Most people dwindled in both stature and spirit because they were once again at the mercy of the full power of Earth's gravity. But some survivors took refuge in the mountains. That's that Caucasoid Mountain, where they were less affected and dwindled less in size and spirit. These people were Aryans, Caucasoids.
That's not even true.
It sounds like pseudoscience. It's pseudoscience.
They're not Aryans. That's the problem with that part of what he's talking about, even though he might be talking about some people in the Caucasus that were different, because that could be true. But the word Aryan doesn't have anything to do with these people he's talking about. Okay, so Zulu mythology says that the moon was brought into orbit and it's hollow, and that some python people live in there, possibly reptilians.
Uh-oh.
But the problem is, now you were talking about three moons. Problem with that is that the moon uh, is about the same age as all the other things in the orbit. So it's probably not something old that they brought in from somewhere else
Hmm.
because all of this stuff seems to be the same age. Thoughts?
Well, I think that Nazi research is a bunch of plagiarized bullshit. But it rings a little true because what that sounds like to me is the story of Atlantis and Lemuria. You remember when Atlantis and Lemuria had that battle and triggered young Adrias through their weapons to destroying Earth. um, the Lemurians took refuge in a mountain. So it sounds like the Nazis found some truth and then tried to make it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what Europeans do. They take that's what European. Excuse me. Let me rephrase myself. Historically, that's what his. Let me watch my words. Historically, European culture has a tendency of taking somebody else's story, repackaging it, remixing it, and make it seem
Butchering it.
butchering it. Yeah, making it seem like it's them. So, Wanda, you're gonna love this because the conclusion I made is the not Adolf Hitler was remixing the story of Mount Shasta with the Lemurians. So there's a mountain in Washington that all kind of strange shit happens all the time called Mount Shasta, where there are allegedly giant people who are hyper advanced, who are said to be
Mhm.
the Lemurians. And
And the
go ahead,
Native Americans say that they're living inside the mountain. So,
guys. Google Mount Shasta.
and there's a lot of weird things going
Lot
on
of
over
weird
there.
things. It all weird all the time. People go to disappear hiking. Um, I mean, just Google Mount Shasta in Washington, hit images like all these weird clouds form. People have said that the top comes off every once in a while, and there's a city inside of it. I mean, the weirdness just does not end. We're gonna go to get some new speakers. We're gonna go to Fire Nagy, then Trey Day, and the Black. Fire Nagy, what up?
All right. Good day. I think what you're referring to in science is called the three body problem. I think that is German pseudoscience because our moon right now is tidally locked, and our moon is responsible for stable, our stable, planetary environment and things like that. And if our moon spun, it would pull, and we'd have more earthquakes, more volcanic eruptions. And if we had a second moon, it would disrupt it wouldn't necessarily disrupt our orbit because our orbit is controlled by by the sun. But what it would do is it would cause more unstable environmental things to happen on Earth. I sent you something that was called the three body problem, and I'm real big into sci-fi, and that's one of the things I've been learning about like the last year. Is that. And so I think the Germans, when they say we found this and that, that's more like the kind of Nordic myths. I've seen that in a lot of the sci-fi things. They talk about like these extraterrestrials come to Earth, they're Nordics, and I see that a lot in the sci-fi community. They
Yep.
believe that these Nordics are superhuman, supersized, and things like that. And to the other guy's point, when he was talking about the people of Thrace and Bulgaria. I think what happens a lot in history, um, especially 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, is people can attribute a new species to basically I don't know how to put this, but if human beings stay in a small pocket for too long, then they begin to interbreed. And once they cross interbreed things like that, you start to see genetic deformities. You saw that in European royalty, like the Romanovs. That's what created hemophilia in the Romanovs, things of that nature. And I think that sometimes what
The
they believe they're
Habsburg.
observing. Yes, the Habsburgs as well. What sometimes people think is like genetic, um, what's the word I'm looking for? De-evolution or genetic like breaks off is actually just, is inbreeding. That's what happened to like that's what they believed also happened to the what's the word the Neanderthal. The Neanderthal they got pushed into small pockets, and those small pockets of humanity inbred, and over time the inbreeding like it kind of just it destroyed their group. It made their group less healthy, less viable, things like that. And I think that sometimes like when we're looking at history, keep in context that people back then did not really travel that far. outside of like their geographical upbringing. Like they didn't go 10, 20, 30 miles away. And so they were breeding over and over and over, inbreeding, because that was a common thing, is to have, is to intermarry with your cousins, intermarry with your sisters. No one, they didn't fully understand that. To this day, that is what happens in, Southeast Asia. It happens in the Indian community and Pakistani community. They intermarry their cousins a lot, first cousins, second cousins. It's pretty common. I'll let my plan with that.
Appreciate it, Fire Nagy. I think I said the Black. Go ahead, Black, and then Trey Day. Oh, and
Uh,
we'll come back
yeah.
around to you. Go ahead.
Uh, I think it was Trey before me, and then
Oh, my bad, my bad. Go ahead, Trey.
Good looks. Uh, but yeah, the whites, from a genetic standpoint, they're Dravidian albinos. Put it in jumbotron. Several studies have pointed this out. They group with Pajeets. Um, they have haplogroup R, and they're essentially just their albinos. They're genetically identical. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and essentially they've been inbreeding over the last few centuries, and this has contributed greatly to their birth declines all around the world. It's not just a modern society like how they're trying to play it off. No, they genuinely have issues of reproduction due to them inbreeding as a result of them trying to deify their genetic condition. They're not a race; they're a condition. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. The concept of race, that's ridiculous. They don't have enough genetic diversity to be called a race. If we're going to consider races from a genetic standpoint, the only races are in Africa, the different types of African groups from a genetic standpoint. Whites simply don't have enough genetic material to distinguish themselves, even between East Asians and other non-Africans. It's simply just political science with this categorizations they do, these racial categories and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, they aren't really they aren't really natural, man. And another thing, just the fact that you have a genetically recessive population, that doesn't make any sense from a natural standpoint. Genetically recessive people or albinos pop up in every tribe, like one in every 1,000 people. How the
Hmm.
fuck? How the fuck does a whole tribe of genetically recessive people pop up unless it was some sort of selective breeding at some point? And they say it happened about 6,000 years ago, and that's that.
Mm.
If that's not classic proof of what's really going on with them and what they really represent, I don't know what is, but I'll land on that.
Well,
Selective breeding, you say? Hmm.
yeah.
Maybe
What you say,
some
Wani?
splicing. I said selective breeding, like splicing things in.
Hello.
Yeah, they too made the motherfuckers. They're devils. The set Typhonians. If I really want to get into it,
Set time. So like set like you talking about like set Asar set set
yeah,
Asar. Tell me,
yeah,
educate me.
yeah. The
You
people.
cooking? I'm not gonna let you go on that. Tell me more.
So my
Set.
theory again with Wani, I said she'll have issue with this a few spaces ago, but she was cool with it. But I noted again how the Indian people, because they're Indian albinos. I noted again how Indian people, they were a part of the kingdom of what they call Kush or Nubia. It extended from Africa all the way into the Indus Valley. All of that was considered Nubia. So why people don't put two and two together and acknowledge that they had a role in this shit, I don't understand. But them people were kicked out of Africa by Narmer. They worship Set. The Nakada period,
Hmm.
to the Badarian period, that was ushered in by people leaving the Sahara Desert, where again sickle cell and all that stuff came from. When it dried up, people started moving in east into the Nile Valley, and some people like the Mande people went west and created the Artichet as it dried up.
Woo.
But
Now, what did I
Yeah,
disagree about?
yeah.
Hey,
I
This
agree
Trey
with.
is
up in
this is
here.
some
Hey,
good
he
info.
cooking.
Yeah,
I'm
Hey,
let me
glad
hear
he hit
it.
on
yeah,
that Indus Valley thing because that's facts. Indus Valley and the Sumeria, they try not to. They try to tell us that those were two different
nope,
civilizations, but they really weren't.
nope.
And those were the original Moabites, the Semites, not Hamites, not Africans, Semites, Moabites. It's a difference. Black Asiatics.
Yep, yep. I like looking at a lot of early anthropological works where they weren't PC prior to like the 1950s when they just objectively stated the categories that they put the skeletons in. For example, when they say pre-dynastic Egypt, there were different types of people. Pre-dynastic Egypt is Nubia.
Right.
That's what it is. Pre-dynastic Egypt is nothing but Nubia. So when they talk about pre-dynastic Egyptians, they talk about different types of pre-dynastic Egyptians. And one thing they always talk about is there is a continuum between this Dravidian type of pre-dynastic Egyptian that we see in the Western Desert and the same type that we see in Sumeria and the same type we see in the Indus Valley. They say these are the exact same people. And even in the Aegean Sea, those people, those people worship Set or Typhon up there, and the Indian people, those people who are part of that early African, you know, biocultural spear in the Sahara Desert, they played an instrumental part in the spreading of that type of religion, that type of thought process. Their genetic markers are seen all throughout their gene. I got to repost all this stuff. I had it all posted on my old account. But this is stuff that they don't really want you to put two and two together with. And I just find it kind of interesting. I think that the initial war between the Set Typhonians and the people who worship Asar, our people, our group, I think that war is still going on, in my opinion. I got a whole theory about what's really like. I mean, for
Go
example,
ahead. Keep going. Tell us.
cool, cool. You see, like the rise of the Indians and the Pajeets and whatnot. I think that's even tied to it. I mean, these people were the Set Typhonians. Set was the god of trick, the god of tricksters. White people, in my opinion, they ain't nothing but a slave army. They're just doing the work that they were designed to do. I don't think that they even have a program. I think that the people who initially created them, I think that these are melanated people. I think that they run the world. In my opinion, that's just my deep, deep conspiracy with it. But in my opinion, the Indian people, these people are ops. They got kicked out of Africa twice. The pre-dynastic war with Narmer, where he has
Interesting.
right. That's what I'm saying. Narmer has a whole palette where he's hitting them on the side of the head with a mace. That's the same mace that the Zulu people have too, by the way. And he has a fly whisk hanging from his backside. That's a Bantu tradition.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And the people who he's hitting upside the head, that's a set worship in Indian. That's a Pajit. That initial branch that got kicked out, they didn't go into the Middle East. They went into Europe. Those people settled into the Aegean.
So you're giving a whole bunch to unpack, Trade A, man. Are you saying that this whole debacle, this whole shit we're going through is because of the worshippers of Set Typhon?
Yep, it's a war. I think the Moors were nothing more than they were the people who carried out a more recent version of that. These were carriers of that tradition, in my opinion.
Wow.
Look at what they did. Look at what they actually did. These people empowered and weaponized the Set Typhonians, the people of Set the Whites. They gave them Freemasonry, the ancient Egyptian sorcery. They gave them the Rosicrucians, the German version of Freemasonry. All these all these secret societies that run the world today and put a foot up our ass, the Moors gave to these people. Uh,
Wow.
and you look at where the Moors came from. They came from that Middle Eastern region, that region that was called referred to as the Deseret by Kemet. People, the nomadic regions. People who were ops to Kemet in the entire lifestyle. And you look at what they did. These people are ops, dude, and that's. I think the Moors still run the world, in my opinion. I mean, they went to they went to Western Europe where these people who couldn't even speak, white people didn't even have a language. They didn't even have a language. The barbarians who the Romans talked about, the ancestors of the Franks, the Gauls, the Anglos, they didn't even know how to talk. And that was stated by Hannibal. He said these motherfuckers were so stupid. They would just huddle up with grass around them and fucked up hair and all type of dirty shit. They were retarded.
They
So
didn't know how to use their larynx properly.
yeah, they didn't even develop that until recently. They didn't even know how.
Because you have to, somebody has to talk to you for you to know how to use it.
Right?
If no one knows how to talk, you will be barking at the
Yeah,
They
moon.
were
Bobby
ooh,
Hemmett
and
said they used to grumble.
that's what the Egyptians
Down syndrome, baby.
said. These people are always groaning. These people are always grunting and groaning. That's what the Egyptians literally said about them. And the last wave of those people leaving the caves, those were the Anglos, the so-called apex of today's society. Those were the last branch of white people leaving the Caucasus Mountains. That's why they were the last to have a language and last to be civilized. And these people, These people destroyed the Roman Empire and didn't build anything in its place, which proves they don't know anything about civilization because they just left the caves. The Moors saw that weapon that was initially created by the Set Typhonians, by the Set worshippers, that priesthood. They saw that weapon in Western Europe and they went over and trained them up, gave them all the weaponry they needed to conquer the world. These
Trey,
people have a brain.
and I'm sorry, other speakers, but Trey kind of blowing my mind. He's connecting some dots for me. So Tariq said this the other day. Tariq said that the Moors, the Moorish temple people have a history, and I'm paraphrasing Tariq. They have a history of going against Black Americans, and am I hearing you? Two things, Trey, and I'm gonna shut my mouth and let you land and move on to another speaker. But two things. Are you saying that the Moors are the true source of this evil? That's something Bobby Hemmett said a while back. Are they're the
That they
true?
are. They're the
Wow.
they're the
So the Moors were the followers of Set.
Yes, yes, they carried that tradition. Abrahamic religion is nothing more than a secret. It's bullshit. It's teaching you that God is a spook outside of you. It's teaching you to worship bullshit. They ushered in the third branch of Abrahamic religion, the third branch of it, and they gave.
One more question before I move on and let you land and move on before I forget. You were talking about Wani said gene splicing. You were alluding to the creation of another man. Now, I know you read a book that I have by Sheikh Anta Diop called African Civilization, The Origins of African Civilization. You were talking about it the other day. Do you remember in it when he talked about the Tamahu, like the created
Yeah,
man?
he spoke about Champollion's diaries, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
He mentioned his diaries, and that's public knowledge. Y'all can Google that. That's on Google. That's on some sort of Google Drive or some sort. But it's
Hmm.
read his whole diaries. He basically said that the Egyptians, what they wrote on their wall. First of all, he said they were niggas. He said they were the same people we have enslaved in Americas. Them are the Egyptians. We done fucked up. He said that. He said,
Hmm.
and he also said that he said that these Egyptians said that their ancestors were savages. He said that they were walking around with animal furs on and fucked up tattoos all over their head and shit. They stunk. They didn't know how to talk. But most importantly, and this is what people really overlook, he said that there was a consistent order of the ranking of man in place of Horus in front of Horus, meaning the man who was closest to Horus, the group of people who were closest to Horus, and he ranked the different race nations throughout the world. Now, of course, the difference between the Egyptians and the Nubians before they got Egyptianized during various periods in the New Kingdom, Egyptians worship Osiris, Horus, and Isis. That's the whole purpose of Egypt's existence, was to break away from Nubia. Nubia was not called Nubia; it was called Ta Seti, which has two meanings: land of the bow and the land of Set. These people were worshiping Set.
Wow.
And Narmer was like, "Look, fuck this shit. Our people, we have a different religion. We worship Asar, Isis, Horus and whatnot." So
Right.
that was the purpose of that
The
war.
Holy Trinity.
Right, right. That's why Egypt was called heaven on earth. It was the part that broke away from the fuck shit that was going on in Nubia. Nubians had the potential to be good and had the potential to go to heaven. That's why in the Book of Gates it says that the only two people who were created by Horus and could actually go to heaven or the afterlife were the Egyptians themselves and the Nubians, the black people of the world. And he said that the groups that come after them were the East Asian, the Asiatic people, the Namu, and then the Tamahu, which George Macy, which some people have disputed this, said that it meant the created white people. Uh,
Right.
Tamahu translated to, and that's been disputed by different linguists and whatnot. So I'm not going to push that, but it's just interesting that he was a cult leader, and he was a cult leader in London back in the time when Charles Darwin and all them lived there and whatnot. So he was hanging out with big dogs. His cult because George Macy wrote a whole book called Egypt Light of the World, saying that the Egyptians, of course, black like us,
I
and
have the
they
book, hadn't read it yet. I'm glad you
right.
reminded me that I got it.
Bobby Hemmett talks about that like a motherfucker. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He loves George Macy in that book. But yeah, that's like, yeah, he said George Macy, when he went when people first went when the white people first went to Egypt after Napoleon, they didn't have a lie together. They just objectively wrote what they saw. It wasn't until about 1840 or so that this dude named Seligman and a few other anthropologists, they started to say, look, we got to come up with a lie to justify enslaving these niggas. We got to say they never created civilization. All these Egyptians we're finding are niggas. That's what they're saying. We got to find a way to create confusion about this. So that's when you start to get a lie that Egyptians were not black around the 1840s and stuff like that. That's where that shit started to grow. But there was still people who didn't go along with that. A lot of Europeans who just still reported what it was, particularly French people. But Charles Darwin, he was one of the people who actually spoke up about what he really saw there. And he said that the Egyptians were, of course, us. And he created an entire branch of Freemasonry that was distinct from the one that kind of runs the European or Western empires. The British government shut his whole organization down. Like they raided it.
Wow.
They raided it because apparently he was doing something that was a little too powerful for them to contain. So they shut his whole organization down. But that's worthy of investigating. But yeah, as far as Champollion, yeah, he said that the people who there's a consistent ranking of man based on how close they are to Christ. Horus was Christ.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So Christ consciousness and the East Asian and the Tamahu were always ranked in that order of dead last from Christ consciousness.
Woo.
And you see who has been put as the so-called front runners of the world today
Well,
is
well,
people.
the what Trade is saying is actually very true. There, the ranking in order of what he's talking about of men was beautifully painted in Medu or what you know as hieroglyphics, on the Temple of Seti One, SCTI number one, and in the 30s, the Temple of Seti One mysteriously flooded, although it was in the middle of the fucking desert, and that that hieroglyphic was lost. But there are pictures of it, so he's right. My question is, where, and I'm gonna end on this: where did Tamahu, who created them?
So the whole what call it Yakud thing, but let's
Oh,
let's not even get into that. Let's get
You guys are
let's
all over the place.
no
You're
let's
all over the
yeah,
I know
place.
I'm coming
I
to you,
know
You're
Mikhail. I'm
all over
coming
the
to you.
place.
let's get into the cult that was initially the initial war that crashed out. So this goes back to the whole Atlantis thing that you were talking about. So
Okay.
during the Atlantis period, that's when everybody's third eye was open. Everybody could, they didn't talk, they telecommunicated, all that stuff. That's what they say, they could do during that time. It was high consciousness. And Atlantis crashed. Consciousness went away. Uh,
Right.
there were some people who retained that consciousness. Those people became the priests of Egypt and the pharaohs of Egypt. There were people who retained that consciousness, and they were not good people. These people wanted to enslave the masses who were dumbed down after the fall of Atlantis. Those people formed their own priesthood. These were
Hmm.
worshippers. They worshiped the lower self. That's what they were trying to gear everybody into to control the masses the same way they do today, how they have everybody controlled today through pornography and all this degenerate shit that they put out for free.
So, there's a relation. You connecting a lot of dots for me. There's a relation between the these people in the Brotherhood of Belial.
I'm not sure the modern brother of the modern brotherhood's names, anything like that. I'm
No,
just
they're not modern. They're old, old, old.
yeah. I mean, I've heard it. I've heard that before, but the particular organizations, I'm not gonna cap no.
Trey Day, we gonna get up, man. I gotta pick your brain on some things, man. But Mikhail, go ahead and rebuttal and clear this up. I know you're an expert in this arena. Clear it up for us.
Where do we begin? You're all over the place.
Okay.
I mean, you're all over the place, and many of what you're saying is not correct.
Okay.
It's just
Set it
not.
straight.
Well, Stevie Wonder. Let me begin by saying that Stevie Wonder, in the song "Superstition," said, "When you believe in things that you don't understand, you suffer." You mentioned Nar Mur, Trey. Mur. as you mentioned, Su, Mer. Do you know the definition of Mer, sir?
You asking me?
Yes,
His name, well,
Mer.
Menes Narmer. That's a Greek name. His name was Menes Nama. That's his
No, no, no,
that's his.
no, no, no. Mer, 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 as in Su, Mer, Na, Mer, Su, Mer. Very similar, right? Okay. We also called the pyramids Mer.
That's a fact.
And there was a land called Ta Meri, right?
True.
Okay. And there was a Kemetic tool called Merket, which meant beloved, instrument of knowing. Mer meant beloved. Su Mer, beloved. Na Mer, beloved. The pyramid, Mer, beloved. Okay, let's just start there. The people who you call Kush, do you know the definition of Kush?
No, sir. Go ahead. Tell me.
Royal black. Black meaning enlightenment, not skin color. The definition of Kemet, perfect black meaning perfect enlightenment, right? You were correct. Kush founded Kemet, but that was just a continuum beginning with Anu, the first, what we would call complex civilization. And most of what they knew came from the Keftui, not a place called Atlantis. That name never existed. You mentioned Ta-Seti. There's a Seti bow. It was based around the Seti bow. That's why it was called the land of the Seti bow. And from these people came a group of people called the Magi. We talked about them. And those were the people who produced a global military to protect the lands of Mer, that empire that we call Kush, Kemet, and Anu. And they occupied the Arabian Peninsula as well as South Asia for thousands of years as part of a continuum. They weren't kicked out of Kemet. It was an empire before a man named Mer even existed. You mentioned the Temanu. Those are the people from the Western Sahara, the people today we call the Nigerians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's clear, it's on the walls of Kemet. And these are the people who organized with the Teanu, the ones today that we call the Arabs. And those were the people that the people of Kemet called the Libu, as in Liberia. And they were the people that occupied the 21st, I believe the 21st, possibly 22nd dynasty until their asses were kicked out, until they were handled by the so-called Neo-Assyrians. The Neo-Assyrians are a continuum of those who came from the north, the so-called Albinoid type. And those are the people who conquered much of the areas you call the Indus Kush Valley, which was called Kish and Kushan, part of the empire, which led to the phenotypical changes. The ones who we call the Kinanu, they occupied all of the waterways, all of the island so-called kingdoms, and those were the people who left and went to the areas we call the Americas, and many of which are your descendants. And if you look at them, there's illustrations of them everywhere. These are red-skinned, slender, Negroid people with feathers in their hair and boots that you see the fake so-called Indians wearing. And they're wearing turquoise around their belts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the ones that Albinoids are calling the Atlanteans. And those are the same ones who were part of the continuum of Anu, Kush, and Kemet. And there was no sorcery. They practiced what we call lightwardness. As above, so below. As within, so without. So without. They practiced the science of sound, the science of quantum monumentality. Their culture was source culture. These are the ones who mapped the stars. These were the students of Yehuti. These are the ones in which the book, the Myrrh roll tablets come from. Myrrh roll tablets came from. That's the center of gravity for every so-called religious book that existed there. That those who you call the Albinoids or the Mongoloids, the Arabs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, could not understand, even to this day, and created all sorts of things that got you guys spitting woo-woo. You got to go back to the source and stop starting in Egypt. There's no such place called Egypt or even Nubia. If you're going to begin your research, start at least 3 million years prior to that, and then walk it back into the Nile Valley region. And you'll find that everything precipitated from what we call the Ethiopian highlands. I've shown Wani pictures of the 3 mirrors, the mounds, that are identical to the 3 pyramids, the mirrors in Kemet, called the Giza Plateau.
What Dr. Chancellor Williams confirms that. He said he has a chapter in his book. It's called Egypt, Ethiopia's oldest daughter. So it implies that Ethiopia was first.
Yeah, I mean, it's anthropologically proven. You know, it's no question about that. So you start there. You know, I spoke with the brother Tony numerous occasions. Of course, he's looking to do a lot of anthropological work in this area, but this is where they should have began in the first place. And they would have been, their orientation would have been more correct instead of all over the place. You know, these people here, you have 100 million people here who know they are the descendants of those who went from the so-called Nile Valley region or the so-called Eritrean Sea or the Red Sea into that area and populated. But they also know that they populated the so-called Indian Ocean as well as the Mediterranean basin, as well as the Atlantis, what you call the Atlantic Ocean, was called the Ethiopic or Ethiopian Ocean. You got to start at the source, because you're just going to be all over the place saying words that never existed. There's no such, there's no recorded evidence on any rock art or any petroglyphs of somebody or a place called Shem. Where did that name come from? Well, those who distorted the word Chem and called it Ham. Chem as in chemic. Ham is a distorted European version of that word. And so they had to place themselves in history and say, well, there was a man or a place called Shem, and he was mixed. You see? And then we take that foolishness and we give it to our people and confuse them even more. It's not, this is science. This is, evidential, proven facts. You don't have to run on theories or hypotheses. Yeah, it's entertaining, but sometimes it just sounds crazy. It is crazy. And so we just have to be really, really careful and do deep history and have a wise, use your wise, intelligent, original Black mind to discern the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad. Nobody was kicked out of the land of the so-called black grass and sent to South Asia. Those people were there for thousands of years as a colony, as a culture, before there was such thing as a albinoid resembling so-called Indian. Those albinoids didn't come along till later. And we've already talked about the so-called Cro-Magnon types that went into the area we call West Africa, specifically the Niger, so-called Niger River area, or the Nigeria area, created from this ghost Hopper group and came up with this thing called the Neanderthals that the albinoids try to claim themselves, and they weren't even albinoids. So we just, if we just become a little bit more scientific, meaning proven, instead of being all over the place, then, it'll be more helpful. And, I'm really just waking up and hearing this, and I'm like, okay, so it's just really all over the place.
Well, one of the frustrating things, as I've identified before, is the warfare with words. I think we had a space on it. The warfare with words. I read an article, Mikhail, not an article. I don't know if it was from the Emerald Tablets, but it was Tahuti said they called him another name, but it basically was Tahuti. He said, "Do not learn." I'm paraphrasing it, but he was like, don't learn the language of Greek. Don't learn it, because it'll confuse you." And that goes back to the original attack. The main attack is through language. All these renaming and is an attack. It confuses you, and there's significance to some of these names. For instance, let me give you a really good one. The Greeks renamed Horamakhet the Sphinx. So you got a whole world calling it Sphinx. Now let's examine the word Sphinx. Sphinx basically means like sphincter, like something that strangles. Like a sphincter is a. This is graphic, but only way I know how to describe it. Your your anus is a sphincter. Sphincter. It pulls together, and the Greeks basically thought of the Sphinx as something that held back or pulled their culture together. They thought of it as something bad. Well, the Kemites, Temerians call it, or Tamarians called it Hora Maket. Hora Maket has a whole different meaning. That means Christ on the horizon. Now I know that sounds,
It means Heru
yeah, but which is the
on the
Christ,
horizon.
the
Well,
Charist. Yeah,
to the Europeans, but it meant Heru.
the savior on the horizon is what I'm trying to say. The hero on the horizon, the same thing.
Heru,
Yeah. But
the Heru,
yeah,
right?
so
And see, the thing about it, it's called the gateway of Hu, right? And the Hu meaning the Sphinx. That's why we call it the Great Heru Maket, right?
mm,
The Heru on the horizon facing east, right? That stands guard over what's called the Kurt Neter, right? And underneath the Meru, the Mer, right, is, you know, is the Khufu Gisa, the rock plateau, right? And that's the complex inside the great, so-called Great Sphinx, or the Heru Maket,
mhm.
and even there, you have, and this, there are the subterranean chambers and repository of knowledge
Yeah, I heard a
that
library is going to
preserve,
there.
absolutely, yeah, and it's stores the secret knowledge of the Meduneter.
Uh-oh.
There's stored histories of the people of Earth, so you're talking at least 3 million years of history, the mysteries of gold and what it's worth, the reason for the movement of the sun, the cosmic or the galactic connections between constellations, the knowledge, even on the dark side of what we call the moon, the music that's played with divine tunes, meaning, excuse me, the theory of music, and of course, the harmonic of relations with the cosmics, the powers of the stars in the sky, the philosophy of time, hate, love, strategy that's used in war and peace. So there's
Mikhail, could you do
you-
me a favor and give us some, put them in the purple pill, some, give me some scholarship to read on this. This is interesting.
And one quick thing, what are your thoughts about the moon? There's a few myths out there about it being brought into orbit, about it being hollow, and the astronauts say that it rang like a bell when they dropped some equipment on it. Any ideas or thoughts on whether it's hollow or tugged in or towed into orbit or whether it's always been here?
I don't, other than it was once a part of, the matter and the material that formed what we call the earth.
Hmm.
Hmm.
One of the Zulus say that there is a time before the moon was in the sky. So, just checking out all the myths and seeing what they're talking about. Sometimes they're completely wrong, and other times it leaves you with a question mark over your head.
Right. So, and that's the point that I'm making. Unless, you know, you know, for me, unless I've done my team, we've done the research, and I don't, I don't comment on it, because you open one door, then there's 1,000 other doors, and then they'll have you chasing your tail like these albinoids and the rest of them do, and uh, and then you become a foolish cult sort.
Very fascinating.
Um, yeah, so it's just really good to be as factual as you can, because especially this is an excellent room of enlightenment. In fact, it's the only place on the app that brings forth this kind of enlightenment, and brings forth brilliant people like Trey and others, professor and so on and so forth. Um, but you know, for me, I just, when you talk about Jehuti and even the Medu Neter, we, we need an understanding of that as well. And, these names that, are just completely erroneous, and foolish that these albinoids have given us. And, the science of transmutation is all there,
Brother Mikhail, I want to know
it's,
more about the room up under the horror market, or that Sphinx, if you want to call it that. I want to know more. You said something about what makes the sun move. Where can I find information on that?
yeah, I'll send it to Wani. I've sent you some stuff before. I don't know if she's forwarded any of it to you. I've put some things uh, in your DM, and you haven't looked at it. So
You said that before, and I didn't see it. Hold on, I'm gonna look through it again. I didn't see it in my
I
DM.
wonder if yeah, I think we might have a problem sometime.
Yep, I didn't get it.
Now, that naming things and us running around calling things Egypt when when it's not really legitimate, that goes to the other room we had about Europeans naming things and renaming them and naming four different people Indians and how
Right.
much confusion it causes.
And here goes a point of confusion. When you're academically identifying these places, if you use real name, nobody knows what you're talking about. So it's like, I'm at a conflict.
I have to still say pygmy or no one knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's a pejorative. So, Mikhail, I'm looking through my DMs again. I believe you because I remember the day you said you sent me some stuff, but I never got it. So I should have told you earlier, but I never received it.
well, after a while, I think your DMs it
No, I
erases
look I look
off on
right
your stuff.
away. I look right away, and I have stuff from. I'm looking right now at messages from 9/25 2024. I see some stuff from 2023. Mine doesn't erase because I usually don't. People don't usually DM me a lot. So if you don't mind
Okay.
sending it again, I should have told you earlier, but I never received it. I remember I asked you to tell me more about Anu, and I remember asking you that, and I never received it. I just didn't say anything. But yeah.
Okay. In your DM, do you see something where I reference, excuse me, the Mongolians residing in Asia and their counterpart in North and South America drew inspirations from the
No,
Capital
sir.
culture?
I'm telling
Do you
you.
see that
No,
in
sir.
their
I'm telling you. I don't
document?
see you at all in here. I don't see you at all. So I don't know what that's about.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
I've sent you. Yeah.
yeah. I meant to say something
Mm-hmm.
earlier, but I didn't.
Because I'm looking at it all
What's
right
the
now,
date?
and I see November 5th.
November.
There.
Okay, I'm in November right now. Yep, I have something from somebody on November 4th, and I have some from somebody on November 6th. Never received it.
Yeah, I'm
Yep,
looking at it.
I believe you, but it's not coming to me.
Okay. I'll screenshot it and send it to you. But yeah, there's just so much. It's just so much to unpack. And many of the so-called scholars are wrong,
And what I'm saying is
very
it's
wrong.
intentionally wrong. I've dedicated my life to this. It's intentionally wrong. It's an attack.
Well, I'm talking about our
Oh,
scholars
okay.
too, as well. It's not just European scholars, ours as well.
Yes, I agree.
And
How?
Oh, go ahead.
What do you think about George James? How do you feel about him?
some of it is correct, especially when he's going in on those so-called fake Greeks and their reimagination of things that you know doesn't belong to him. But even then, when you see an assertion, then it's wise to research at least 3 to 5 thousand years minimum before it to see the origin, where the origin of that assertion began. you know, maybe a million years. And it's fun. But it's a good exercise in um, in enlightenment, because you have to be able to speak with authority, when you're quoting other people's assertions or theories, you know.
I want to bring up one point that a lot of these scientists, somebody mentioned, what did they say, political science or the politics of science? Yeah, that's a thing. So here's one of the things they do. They play both sides. So on the moon story, they boohooed and whined when their equipment hit the moon. And they said it rang like a bell for 3 hours. It was hollow, and they had all these things to say. And then when people start asking questions, they call you a laughing stock. They
Hmm.
clown you and then try to act like you're an idiot. They did the same thing with the Olmec. Oh my goodness, these faces are very suggestive. Well, we don't have scientific proof, but well, just to look at the face alone, you would. I have tons of these guys saying that. And then when you say, oh, yeah, wait a minute, who are these guys? And they start researching it and come up with, you know, uh, ceremonies and script and things that lead you to believe that this is a different group than what we expect. Then they call you pseudo. And so we keep being drug along, just like with Luzia. They put the reconstruction on the skeleton, and it came back as a woman that you would classify as a black woman in the Americas. But then when you say, hey, wait a minute, look at this. Oh, no, she's not black. She's Asian. What are you guys talking about? You're delusional. They gaslight us all the time with this stuff. And do you think that they didn't do a reconstruction of Luzia, look at her and say, should we say that this is a black person? Why do they put it out there and then retract it? Why don't they come to a consensus and say what they're going to say?
Well, Wani, it's like any defense attorney will tell you. You got to tell them the truth so they can lie for you. They know exactly what the truth is, which is a frustrating thing when you study this stuff as much as I do, because it's lies, and it's not just simple kindergarten lies. It's very clever. It's renaming, and mixing a little truth in there with confusion. So my thing is, I would like to know some sources, that some esoteric sources, and maybe it may not be a good thing to put them in the jumbotron. Just put them in the purple pill, or email them to me or something,
Mm-hmm.
so I can do, because I want to do some research, because I want to know the truth. I see, I got hints. I have a general idea of what's going on, but these words, like Egypt means something. Egypt is a pejorative. It means something bad, like to. I forgot exactly what it meant, but it means Egyptus. That means to. It's something bad. The Greek. So, like the book of coming forth by day is named the book of the dead. That's something. Oh, that's about dead people. That's a European tactic of renaming to like a red herring to throw you off the truth. There's something they don't want us to know about us, and who's proving this right now is not a black man. It's a white man named Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock is
Or
what?
even
No, go
I'm
ahead, bro.
sorry, uh, even that is just really talking about the rituals of the
Hmm.
transmutation from for example,
You there, Mikhail? I think he went out. Um, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate our brother Mikhail coming here and setting the record straight. And I'm not above correction. You know what I'm saying? But I want to know. So let me know where I can look. You know what I'm saying? That's all I ask. But in
I was
conclusion,
wondering,
go
I
ahead.
was wondering if he was going to come up. I was wondering because I was, I just had a feeling. I know how he is, and I was wondering if he was going
I
to
was
come
gonna,
up and
I was
say,
gonna, I was gonna call him up because Trey was telling me stuff that was blowing my mind. So I was gonna call
mm,
Mikhail up to verify it.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to kind of rebuttal.
Here's,
I think it's gonna be Sonetta in here tonight. Shout out to
oh Lord, hold on, y'all. You know I hate some of that stuff.
yeah, it's anybody.
No, man, no, man, we can't do that, brother.
That's cool.
No, don't do me like that, boy.
Can I can I ask like one question before y'all go into the deep
Oh,
history?
Warner went straight hood.
Well, Mr. X, let's be fair and go to Tyrone right quick because he had his hand up, and then if Mikhail doesn't come back in time, we'll go. Let's go to Tyrone, and then you and let Mikhail finish Landers plane. Go ahead, Tyrone.
Peace to the chat, man. Peace to the chat. I'm happy to be here. Best
Tyrone
best
and hit
space.
his hand and fell asleep.
I
Oh, can y'all hear me or y'all can't
hear
hear
you,
me?
brother.
Come on, Tyrone.
Oh, okay, cool.
I
So
don't hear him.
I hear him.
um, all right, cool. So the full moon, right? Y'all was speaking on the full moon. I used to do a lot of meditation before I started getting into other practices, and basically like yeah, the full moon has like a gravitational pull towards like when it comes to dealing with water, and like there's water in the air, even though we can't see it, it's still water in the air, and basically like a lot of people do their rituals on a full moon because they understand water, and water retains memory. It's like a saying that everything around you has ears because most things are made out of like either solid, liquid, or gas, and it's basically like so if you like for example, I'm gonna give you something. Before it rains or it snows is usually like a full moon. So just recently it snowed, but that has something to do with the moon because the moon has everything to do with like water, clouds, precipitation. So when it comes to you doing like your rituals or your meditation, it's very important to know to do them around like 3 or 4 o'clock when the moon is at its potent when it's potent. You know what I'm saying? Like when it's a full moon and it's utilizing you could utilize the energy if you understand uh the energy that is accessible at that time. It's kind of like a portal. Um Plants also have water in them. So whatever you speak to the plant, and that's where plant rituals come into play as well. So the moon is very important when it comes to things that you want to manifest and things that you personally want to see, including that the fact that you're highly melanated, like your hair coils, so your electrical energy and your magnetic energy is a little bit more potent than the people that are actually practicing it now, like the so-called Jewish people that use the lunar calendar. There's other people that use the lunar calendar. I wouldn't say they use the lunar calendar, but they use the moon to make things manifest. I think it's the Ifa tradition or it's the Voodoo tradition. It's one of them. You know what I'm saying? And they'll have events all night. You know what I'm saying? Doing like different stuff or whatever that I can't really disclose, but they'll do stuff all night, pray all night, laugh, drink, whatever it is. You feel what I'm saying? So I just wanted to touch on the full moon topic is very important to understand. Also understanding the sun. And when it's at its peak and what it's capable of doing as well as far as your body is concerned. So both the sun and the moon both have very powerful effects if you know how to utilize them. And such as plants too. Like if you're gonna do something, it's definitely good to take a bath and have certain plants inside of the tub so the stuff could hurry up and get into your bloodstream. But that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's real interesting, and these are this kind of toys on some of the information that is lost that I think Mikhail was hitting on. Mikhail, you back? Come land your plane.
Thank you, dear brother. I'm here. I know our brother FBA Trey and our brother the Black has submissions, so I can follow.
Okay.
Wait.
So I think the black was first, and then we're gonna go to Black, Mr. X, and FBA Trey. Go ahead, Black.
Uh, I, I really kind of don't want to revert the room back to the Caucasian part, but I get the inspiration from studying certain things in crazy places. So bear with me. uh, the little Circassian people. I first learned about them by learning about the circus and like the different type of uh people that Barnum and Bailey used to have like they used to go around the world and get like certain people in remote areas and display them. You know what I'm saying? And that's how a lot of people in America, like poor white people and rural people, learn about like other places in the world through the circus. So when every time I hear about like the areas and they could fly, I always think about the little trapeze people in the circus because that's who they originated as when they first came over here. They were circus people or gypsies, as we call them sometimes. And I always found that funny. And then the little troglodyte issue, I first learned about that through a song, through a little funk song with my uncle. And I was interested in the word, so I looked it up. And it's a lot of troglodyte caves in like parts of Turkey, Spain, through the little Iberian Peninsula area where the the Franks and some of the Italian people kind of originate from. And it's interesting that LBA Trey say that they couldn't talk and they were stumbling around like cavemen. And it's funny where they find that's where they found a couple of little cavemen that was preserved. So it's funny how all these things kind of like these myths and these so-called pseudoscience mixed with the little real history with oral history kind of correlate. And like Mikhail say, you gotta go through the thin line and eat the meat and spit out the bones to get the true understanding through some of these things. Because by these Europeans coming out these caves and waves, they they did what any person do. They name things the way they wanted to name it, and the power of naming something does mean something. And we see how they have changed the meaning of a lot of places for their benefit and for and against us. And another thing, we talk about like some Masonic kind of writings. Uh, I did a video a long time ago about the book Freemasonry, the art of Freemasonry, and interesting enough, they talk about the three Ethiopias and how it was how Greeks described black people. Ethiopia was like a blanketed term, but they knew that it was three distinct nations in three different parts of the world. So that kind of ties in to another book that I read when Rocks Cry Out, how that that migration from certain places and the intermixing and people starting to have tribal wars because people don't want to identify as the original nation. It's funny how everything we've been talking about for the last couple of months starting to correlate and come together. So I just love these bills.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm just I enjoy myself in these rooms. I'm constantly learning the truth. You know what I'm saying? The truth is hidden from us. I stumbled upon a book called The Children of the Law of One that talks about the original spiritual system, and I'm not done reading it, so I'm not going to speak on it. But yeah, we're missing a lot of pieces. You know what I'm saying? And somebody somewhere in academic world is trying their best to throw us off the trail. You know.
Now, before we move to the next speaker, what about all that cave slander I just heard? I stayed in a cave and it was nice. Nice. Okay? That was one of the most interesting places I've stayed. I don't, like what were these cavemen complaining about? Why did they come to get condos? I don't get it.
It wasn't cave slander. I think it's the people that's deeper inside the caves that we slandering. Cause the deeper you go inside the cave and
You mean with the
you live,
bats?
yeah, the people that's like deep inside the world. Niggas don't go
The
too far.
stalagmites?
Yeah, you know them super albino people that's deep
The
inside them
snakes?
caves. the
The
Yeah,
I
I
am
thought the
legend,
ones
reptilians?
in
the
Turkey
I
were
am
like
legend people.
The reptilians?
Yeah, the I am legend people.
Okay, let me
yeah,
stop
yeah, the ones
joking
in
around.
Turkey are
Mhm.
like a UNESCO World Heritage Site, aren't
Yeah, Turkey has a whole lot of cave hotels that are really nice. I can hear a lot of humming from Empress.
Oh, I thought somebody was doing some Negro spirituals.
Yeah, I didn't know what that.
Church is tomorrow.
Is
Okay,
F is FBH going to go?
is he
No,
talking?
no,
Is this
FBA
guy?
Trey hadn't gone yet. We're gonna go to Mr. X. Could you give a quick submission and then we'll go to FBA Trey?
What
Yes,
about this guy that keeps humming on the stage?
I,
Oh no, he got dropped down, so he's no longer on at speaker status. Well, somebody brought him back up.
I just want to add one quick question that I've been kind of curious about, and Mikhail kind of touched on it, but then he kind of went on because he had so many points to touch. But I've been seeing a lot about this. Apparently, this ghost DNA that's in West Africans. And so I kind of wanted to know more information about that because a lot of white supremacists like that talking point and things of that nature. So I would just like to know like what the story behind that is, and is that since we have a lot of DNA from West Africa, is that DNA within us as well?
What are they saying when they're using that as a talking point?
They're trying to say because we always talk about how they have Neanderthal DNA and like
Mm-hmm.
ghost
Mm-hmm.
DNA. They're trying to say that we have this 20% ghost DNA. I read the
Mm-hmm.
study and it's like they're saying that it went before all of the populations left Africa. So by that, by them saying that, it would mean that they also have it. But apparently they say that they don't have it. So I was just trying to get some more clarity on that.
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, that's not my department.
That's where their origin story begins. So do more research there, and then the more you research, you'll find and understand more about them. That's where their origin story begins, right there.
It's an unknown ancestor,
they? I'm trying to. He said that. Did you mean that black people have ghost DNA? Because I'm trying to figure out what you meant. Who has?
Africans,
Yeah, they
modern West Africans, they say.
Is it modern
Modern
West
West
African?
Africans. Mm-hmm.
It's, it's,
Okay.
it's, it's a mutant gene that merged, excuse me, with the so-called Cro-Magnon, and from there developed the so-called Neanderthals and the Denisovans. But do more research, and then we can unpack it later.
can you can you give me some good information, good resources to start with?
Yeah, if you follow me, I'll put it in your DM.
Okay, yes, sir. Appreciate
And Mikhail, before I forget, make sure you upload those sources in my thing because I didn't. I checked again. I didn't receive them last time.
Sure, no problem.
We're gonna go to FBA Trade Day. He had a rebuttal, I think, or a comment.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Trey.
all right. So the thing about Mother Nubia and all that, nobody's ever disputed that Nubia was the birthplace of civilization. That's one of my main arguments. What I argue is that Kemet was born out of a Nubian civil war. Uh, is that a fact or it's not, Brother McKell?
It wasn't. Excuse me. It wasn't a war. It was a merging of what we would call the upper and lower Nile Valley region. I mean,
Oh no, it was a war. I'm talking about the war that showed enormous palette of the unification between Upper
Norma,
Egypt. That was a war. That was
Norma, Narmer, Mer, Mer, Narmer. was having issues with the Western Saharans, uh, what we call Kemet, right? It's just the changing of one location of the capital to another, and that was done for strategic reasons because the Western Saharans were closing in on a lot of the borders, so they had location into the area in which we call now. And in addition, um, the Sahara was becoming more arid as well. So they were being attacked by the
Right,
ones called like Boo, and
right.
that's the
I
so-called Semi, the
got you, got you. Now
Semihu
the whole
and the Ten.
got you. Now the whole thing I'm
These are the
doing is
same people in the region.
got you. Now the whole thing I'm doing is putting context to the evidence that I am familiar with. You might not be familiar with the evidence I'm familiar with. What I'm arguing is that Nubia was not just one monolithic group. I think we know that. You had people who look like your modern Nilotic Dinka looking people, and then you had people who look like some Bantu people. You have some people who look like Indian people. Proof that they look like Indian peoples in the Jumbotron. This is a French study. You won't have this in English. But what you see, and I circled it, those pre-dynastic people, particularly those of the Nakata, the closest people are the Vedas. Vedas, those are Indians. So again, my initial statement was that Nubia extended from Africa to India for a reason. It was an expansion. Originally, it was in the Sudan, but a group of people expanded into India, and there's a context behind that expansion. These people were conquered. Nubia was conquered by the Egyptians in the New Kingdom. Kerma was a Kushite or Nubian civilization or city state that formed in 2500 BC. When the new kingdom of Egypt came about, that kingdom was conquered, and those people migrated east, forming new civilizations. Elam, for example, in the Indus Valley, and some even went even further east. So this is why people make the argument of China and some of those other spots being black originally, because it was a Nubian expansion. But you have to get particular with it. Which Nubian was it? Again, I said it was at least three different kinds. Four, if you include the Somalis and whatnot. But you got your Dinkas, you got your ones who look like Bantus. You see them giving tribute in New Kingdom temples. Ones look like just like Bantus. Of course, you got the ones look like the Nahesi, and again, you got proof again that there is definitely a biological affinity between certain Nubian groups and modern Indians. That's in the jumbotron. First slide. Second slide, you have genetic evidence of retained genetic evidence of an Indian presence in the Nile Valley, particularly in northern Egypt. The haplogroup LM20, which is an Indian haplogroup where you see the peak at, you see that not just in northern Egypt, where the Set Typhonians were expelled from. You see it around the Aegean Sea, an Indian haplogroup around the Aegean Sea. These people left Africa. That was their leaving point. That's where they exited at. They exited out of North Africa. That's who Narmer kicked out. That LM20 is genetic proof of that. I'm putting context to who these Nubians were. The Medjay people, those were not Egyptians, those were mercenaries. And they only came about during certain dynasties. They were used to protect the pharaoh in certain dynasties, and of course, used in warfare or to regulate certain tribes. Those were not formerly Egyptians. Those were a group of Nubians. And today, the closest people to the Medjay warriors are the Beja people, who are semi-nomadic people who still live in the eastern desert of Egypt and Sudan today. So those are who the Medjay were. We can positively identify those modern people as the Medjay, but those were not the Egyptians. Medjay and Egyptians were two different distinct groups. Medjay were a semi-nomadic people who lived in the eastern desert. They were rough and tough. And they said, we can use y'all for warfare. They had a completely different lifestyle than the Egyptians. But again, I'm putting context to this whole Egypt Nubia thing. Now, Egypt and Nubia became coherent when Egypt conquered Nubia, and when they conquered Nubia, they spread the Osirian religion into it during the New Kingdom. Okay, this is why when Egypt got destroyed during the Persian invasion in 525 BC, they were able to go into Nubia. And also even prior to that, in the late period, the Nubians had been Egyptianized generations prior to the Asiatic immigration
Sure.
onslaught
Not,
in Egypt that began to change the culture, which
not,
brought a need for the 25th dynasty
not,
to come.
see, you're reading Albanoid's version of history. They want you to believe, first of all, it's the Magi, not the Magi, that these that these people who came from the Ethiopian highlands down the Nile Valley, right, were not the mothers and fathers of Kemet. Kemet is relatively new in the span or the course of history. Kerma, you mentioned, that's a later term.
There was a
You
dynasty
know,
in
I
2500.
yeah,
Um,
that would be considered very recent
yeah.
in the we're
Now,
talking history.
now to put context to it, again, you mentioned people leaving the dry Sahara, and yeah, that was a major reason for the conflict. We all
No,
have,
no. They left millions of years prior to that because the Arabian Peninsula was also green, sir.
no,
And there were trade routes. There's trade routes that were established along the lines, along the avenues of various waterways that allowed for these people who left
so
this area to go into uh, Arabia and populate and create cultures there.
so hold on, let me put context because let's put a timeline to this. I don't go past 12,000
Mhm.
BC when I make these. When I look at my evidence, I don't go past the Plastocene because a lot of that to me is guessing work. The
No,
Plat,
it's not.
yeah,
No, it's not because it's proven there's archaeological, geographical evidence that it's not. And you have to do that.
yeah,
You can trace the you can use this to trace the footprint of human civilization as it evolved, especially as it evolved in the use of technology. It's traceable at least 3 million years. We've done it.
Hmm. Very interesting. We're going to have a space on this in upcoming days. I got to really wrap my head around this because this is something I want to know about and something I want to clear up. But just keep this in mind, gentlemen, and look forward to another space where we talk about this. Um, Trey, look out for this. Maybe tomorrow, actually, Trey and Mikhail. I'm gonna move on to a couple of speakers, and I'm gonna go ahead and start winding down. Um, Imprezi, what you have on your mind?
It's
Empress,
Empress.
excuse.
How are
Hey,
you?
good afternoon, good evening.
Empress.
Good Empress, what's up?
Happy New Year. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I always enjoy the platform and is so appreciative of you and Nikki the God. I just want to let you guys know that. I do Oriental astrology, and it's kind of bizarre to me that as we're in the end of the dragon, getting ready to get into the year of the snake, fires always take place from a dragon. If you know anything about dragons in general, they breathe fire wherever they go. And serpents always strangles the life out of things, strike it with venom. And so I say that to say it's going to be a time we really should be watching how things are lining up. And as I'm looking at it, January 21st, the moon will be in Aquarius, sun in Aquarius,
Hmm.
Mercury in Aquarius, Venus and Mars all in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius. So when you count that, that's one, two, three, four, five, six planets all in Aquarian energy. Having said that, and we're in a cycle of Aquarian, it's going to bring out phonies and liars to the forefront, that everyone will be amazed. And it's going to be a time that I see on a spiritual plane, Black folks' minds are opening up, and it's no longer books of knowledge can be hidden, because they've been working hard in the last 30 years to suppress knowledge. But now they can't, because those who don't have a dog in the fight is showing who is the original leaders and who is not. And they hate that. The numbers are dwindling, and you can see this. I'll make this point, and I want you to think about this. Many of the lands that's been being burned down is not just in the whites, but some in the Black middle class. And what the Spirit led to me, when research would be done, the lands that many whites had their homes built in the 1960s, 70s, and some in the 40s, that land was built by Black men, yet they wouldn't sign for reparations. So it's going to wipe their lands empty. All that they spent, they will lose it. If they had just went on and gave reparations, it would be something of an even plane. I've never seen such hostility coming from foreigners that the Black community has benefited in allowing these people to come here. These are the same people that are speaking against so many Black speakers on different platforms, wishing death on us and things like that. And the cliche goes, be careful in life who you mistreat, because that's going to be the same one you'll need in the end, even if you have to benefit from their offspring. When Jimmy Carter passed away, were you aware that he was related to Motown Berry Gordy? Were you aware of that?
I wasn't. This
So, how this goes in a summary, Jimmy Carter's great great grandfather took advantage of some slaves named Gordy, impregnated them, that Berry Gordy's third great grandfather was the descendant. And so Berry Gordy's father and grandfather and former President Carter are all cousins. Yet, while they all have benefited off of slavery, none of these people would ever vote to give reparations. But a new day is here.
Yeah,
And
we are in the age of Aquarius, and what'd you say, January 21st? That's going to be the date. Is that what you said?
so
That's
when you
today,
look at
everybody.
January, excuse me, when you go with January 21st of this year, this is when you're going to have not only the sun in Aquarius, you will also have the moon. You're going to also see where Pluto will be in Aquarius. As I'm looking at it, you're going to see enormous amount of planets all in Aquarius, and more official in the year of the snake, which starts on the 29th of this month. And when that snake energy, because it's a wooden snake, it's going to bring a lot of drastic changes.
Huh. Interesting.
Next
And
2 years,
that's the 21st, you say?
the 21st start,
The day after mass immigrations are planned. Interesting.
the
Interesting.
21st falls on a Tuesday.
Deportations.
That's going to be the second day of the moon being in Aquarius, the sun, excuse me, not the moon, the sun. The moon will be in Libra, and you'll have Mercury in Capricorn. As a matter of fact, Tuesday the 21st, Mercury will be 20 degrees and 15.9 seconds in Capricorn. Venus will be in Pisces. Mars will be in Cancer. And because Mars is going to be in Cancer, anything being sworn into office, Mars being in a high energy in Cancer, it's behind whooping. It means you may get the title, but Mother Earth is going to whoop the dog crap out of you. And what's going to be leading the country is a Gemini dog. Anybody born 1946 is born the year of the dog.
Well,
So
as
when
long
he's
as it
coming,
supports people, that's all I care about.
well, the point is that you may only care about that, but the planet cares about something that's going to benefit the next 100 years.
Hmm.
But let
So, who
let
should the president be?
so in closing, it's getting ready to be phenomenal. One thing I will say you're going to enjoy: the narcissistic gaslighting that you have been seeing on news, um, media, how they always love to make a mockery of the black people, is going to turn. In each of them that took place in laughing, it blows back in their face, and then it's the play the victim role. So we shall see how it goes out. This is something that I do as a hobby. Been doing it for 30 years now. I'm so glad that you guys allowed me to come through. Very cold as hell in Detroit, but it is what it is. Get ready, the year the snake starts.
Interesting. That's very interesting because some things are happening on January 20th that I'm not going to specify, but a lot of things are about to change. And that's very interesting to hear. So 21st is the day after 20th. Very fascinating.
Hmm.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to close. I got something to get to. um, uh, um, so I'm waiting on me. The Black, you want to go ahead and close this out?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the Jimmy Carter thing. Interesting enough, I just learned today that the hometown that Jimmy Carter was raised in was founded by a black man, and his son was one of our great composers that helped preserve Negro spirituals and snatched it away from these carcassonnes from the flapper movement. So yeah, I just wanted to make that be known that it was interesting that he was raised in a Freeman town.
Wow.
Just wanted to add one more thing. We were talking about the ghost DNA. That's a missing ancestor, and there's a Y haplogroup in Native Americans, and that's also a missing ancestor. So it's probably either a hominid that we don't know about, or Yakub running around, maybe a couple of aliens splicing things in. We don't know, but it's probably a hominid we don't know about.
Nice, nice. Ladies and gentlemen, I really enjoyed this space. I enjoyed, the overall tone that came out was we need to go to books that verify truth. If you go to Our Story Publications and Jumbotron, my Cash App, and put $25 in it, you can buy a copy of my book. Make sure you put your full mailing address with the correct zip code. A couple of you put, I had to look zip codes up the other day, so make sure you put the correct zip code. I still got about 70 copies of my book remaining to send out. It's 20. Put $25 on my Cash App and your full mailing address, and I'll send it out to you. Also, check out Tariq Nasheed has a really interesting book, American Race Baiter, and for kids, what's the name of the book for kids, Nikki? Um, Black Heroes, Hidden Heroes from A to Z.
Hidden
Yeah,
heroes from A to
yeah.
Z.
Check it out. But
Yeah.
we need,
And if you look at my highlights or in my replies, you can find all of
right,
Tariq's
right.
stuff.
So just make sure that you stay up on scholarship, and I will be looking at scholarship that was presented today to have new information. And one more thing I wanted to clarify before I give Stacy the last couple words is we got a difficult situation where we're dealing with the renaming of different places, and that's warfare. But sometimes it's impossible. It's, let's say, it's darn near impossible to, when you're teaching, to go with correct names. You're in positions where going with correct names is not really feasible. I dealt with that last Thursday. We were talking about Egypt, and I didn't want to call it Egypt. I want to call it Kemet. And I actually got in trouble because the book, the academic canon, says Egypt. So I just want to remind y'all that that's warfare, and sometimes we have to work our way around it, introduce it as what it's called academically, and then redirect and say, hey, this is what it's called academically, but this is the real name. And just keep in mind that we're in a psychological war where names are used to redirect our minds and keep us off the path. But like the sister said a moment ago, we're entering the age of Aquarius where truth is going to be revealed. It's inevitable. Miss Stacy, last words, and then we'll head out. Uh-oh, she got kicked off. Miss Stacy, you there? It won't add Miss Stacy. Well, my thing says it's an error. It won't add her for some reason. But any last words,
She can talk. We'll let her talk first tomorrow. She does come in our spaces
Miss
often. We'll
Stacy?
let
If
her
you can
talk
hear me, I'll
first
give you
tomorrow. Cause
first
it's
dibs
yeah.
tomorrow to talk. Any last words, Wani?
Good night.
Nikki? See y'all later.
Good
Peace
night.
out,
God
y'all.
bless everyone.